What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Bischoff and Brown right here on the Detroit Lions podcast. He's Scott Bischoff. I'm Russ Brown. We are back. Had to take last week off because I just cannot get healthy, cannot recover from this damn cold cough virus thing that I have. Gonna try to make it through this one without coughing. We'll see. But if I had pause at all, it's not intentional. It's just I gotta make it happen. But Scott, my man, how the hell are you?
I'm great. I'm happy to be back doing this with you. How are you doing?
I'm good. Very good with a 9-1 football team, and we're jumping right into it. And look, I've been very political, kind of on the fence on this show, and I didn't tell you about this pre-show because I just wanted to get a live reaction out of you. But I'm going to puff my chest a little bit because I've been waiting 34 years for this, and damn it, uncensored. I don't care. Take it off YouTube. I don't care. This is the best effing team in the National Football League. The Detroit Lions are the best team in the NFL, and I can say that proudly for the first time in my life. And it's like, I know they beat the Jags, and I know the Jags played very uninspired defense. They made business decisions on the goal line. That was a team that did not want to be in Detroit. But the Lions didn't just decimate. They didn't just destroy them. They didn't just demolish them. They buried them in Detroit. It is now a gravesite at Ford Field. They buried them on the 50-yard line. Doug Peterson's looking clueless at the ceiling right now as he lays on the 45-yard line. I mean, that's what they did to that football team, and it just feels so effing good for the first time in my life where I can sit here and say, this team's 9-1. By the time we get through Thanksgiving, they should be 11-1. And when the season's over, they might be 16-1. Like, that's the type of team that this is trending towards, and that's with all of the injuries. So I know people are going to go, well, Russ, they beat the Texans without Will Anderson and Nico Collins. Guess what?
The Lions don't have Aiden Hutchinson or Marcus Davenport, or they didn't have Laporta last week. And
like, spare me with that. I don't give a shit. This is the best football team with the best roster, and they are beating down everybody. And if you don't like that, cough, cough, Xavier McKinney, guess what? I don't care. They're not here to be your friend. They're going to go and embarrass you. That's why they put up 52 on the Jags. That's why they're potentially could put up 30 to 40 against the Colts this weekend. And again, this might be a close game. We'll get into it. But there's a reason why this team came back and beat the Texans the way that they did. They are a bend, don't break, and they play for Dan Campbell, and damn it, does it feel good to finally have this winning culture, this winning team, and like you can put it on Sunday, and for the first time in your life, not have to worry about the fourth quarter comeback, or are they going to are they going to stumble out of the gates in the second half and not win this game? It feels so good, and it's just like finally in Detroit, we got our team. So that's really where I'm at on a Thursday before Browns and Steelers, before the Lions go to Indy. I feel so good beating this team 52-6, and they demolished them. It was the worst ass kicking, I guess you could say, I've ever seen in a football game. I mean, they put up 659 total yards of offense. 659.
It was clinical in every way.
Yeah.
The good thing about the Texans game is, you don't want your quarterback throwing a bunch of picks, but adversity is a good thing. So as much as, 52-6 against the Jaguars last Sunday is great, it's not a bad thing for them to have to deal with what they had to deal with at halftime of the Texans game. And then to perform the way they did, to shut out Houston in the second half, to play offensively the way they did, even with more turnovers.
Yeah.
So adversity is good. And obviously this is a team that's proving itself more on the national stage than the local stage, because I think at this point in time, we've seen enough to know how good they are.
Yeah.
Right. This is as good a football team as there is in the NFL. The nice thing is that this is an ascending team. This isn't the window. You got a 1-year window because you got a bunch of older players,
right? Or you bought a bunch of guys or whatever.
Yeah. No, this is a team that's going to continue to get better, and the way they've built it, the way they put it together, it's just awesome.
Yeah,
it really is. And I'm with you, man. Like, it feels good. So if they're going to get beat by somebody, that team, whoever beats them, is going to have to play a hell of a football game to beat them.
Yeah,
they're not going to beat themselves like we've seen in the past, right? So go back to the NFC title game, and kudos to the 49ers for hanging in that game,
right?
And coming out on top. But that's what it's going to take. It's going to take, if it's the Colts this week. If the Colts walk away from this game with a win, it's because they executed at almost perfect level.
Right.
And they played phenomenal football to beat the Lions.
Yeah.
I don't think that's going to happen. But, the only thing I wanted to talk about as far as like the Jaguars thing is looking at what they're doing on offense and just if people can remember back in time to the greatest show on turf, the glory days of the Rams when it was Kurt Warner and Torrey Holt and Isaac Bruce and Marshall Faulk, and they just couldn't be stopped. And the Lions have a little bit of that going in today's style of football. They have a little bit of that going. Like, yeah, let's just hand it off, or let's run a toss to Gibbs and get him into the second level. And it felt like in that game, he was so close to scoring multiple touchdowns. I mean, yeah, he had one, but the little swing screen pass that they threw that he went for 50 yards or whatever it was, that was really close to scoring. They're so close, and the margins for a defense to stop some of what the Lions are doing are so small. Sometimes they can't. So you've got Gibbs, you got Montgomery playing, the way he's playing and looking the way he looks. I don't know that I'd want to deal with trying to tackle Montgomery, right? And I'm sure defenses don't really like having to do that over and over and over. So you got the running backs, and then it's Amon-Ra, who's always open forever. So easy, right? And what does he have a touch? I think he has a touchdown in 8 straight games.
Yes.
And then the thing that separates it is the deep crosser to Jamison Williams for 60 plus yards, and just the speed, right? Yeah. And this is all doing this without Laporta, who's an important piece for them. And you think, yeah, it's a little different than what the Rams were, but the Lions' offensive line's awesome. So going forward, if you're a defense, you might be able to stop the Lions here or there in certain ways, but the Lions can beat you in a whole bunch of ways that most teams just can't. I mean, if most teams are built to run it a certain way and throw it a certain way, and if one doesn't work, let's try the other. But the Lions can run it in multiple styles, in multiple schemes. They can run some zone, they can run some gap stuff. Both are super effective with both of their running backs. But just the speed and the playmaking ability with coming from their receivers and some of their weapons, and then the way those guys block for the running backs, it's so much fun to watch.
Yeah.
Well,
and to add to the offensive line part, I don't think a lot of fans really account for this. Maybe they do. And I mean, I didn't really account for it until you just said it. They had their healthy starting 5 and put up 52. They played Houston, and we know Dan Skipper, who only had played 6 career snaps at left tackle, and he did not play very well, but they struggled a lot in that game.
Yeah.
Win 26-23, but they're down a guy. They played Green Bay. If I'm not mistaken, when they played Green Bay, wasn't Awasika in that game because Zeitler was out, if I remember correctly. That game was a little bit closer, but the Lions had pretty much control of almost that entire game. Or maybe that was the Minnesota game that Awasika played, and Ragnow was out.
I remember I was in the stands for the Green Bay game, but I have no specific recall of being in the stands for the Green Bay game. I don't know. I don't remember. I should really know this. Has Ragnow missed time this year?
Yeah, he missed a game, and Glasgow played center, and Al played left guard. I believe that was the Minnesota game.
Right, yeah, I think it was.
Some of these tighter games outside of the kind of the slow start to the season against LA and Tampa Bay, outside of that, when they have that healthy starting five up front, they are decimating teams. You look at Dallas, you look at Tennessee, you look at Jacksonville, and I know those are not great teams, but I mean, you look at Seattle, they decimated them. I mean, they are.
Jacksonville took Minnesota to the wire a couple of weeks ago. You know,
Yep.
So they're,
and I mean, Minnesota's won 7 games, so I can't sit here and be like, well, that's not a good team. That's a good team. That's a divisional game. So like they're pounding on teams when they have that healthy front five, and I think that's a key thing that we really got to keep focusing on is like if they're healthy, Goff has time, they're able to run the football, the rushing lanes are there, everything's there, the opportunities are there, and they're capitalizing like crazy. But to further on that, their defense is just playing outstanding. And we were talking about that before the show. Like, I can't get over how good they're playing. Like, they're playing at, I don't want to say a historic level, but they're playing really good. Top 5, top 10.
I mean, considering the pieces that they're missing, you're without Aiden Hutchinson. Mm-hmm. Whatever we think about Davenport, it doesn't matter. He was their starting edge player opposite Hutchinson to start the season.
Yep.
They're missing him. They're not generating a lot of pressure. They're just not. But it doesn't feel like they're giving up, tons of yards like we've seen in the past, even with this staff, with this coordinator with Aaron Glenn and stuff. They're just that to me is the most exciting part about where we are. I know I sound like a nut job right now. I just said that they're a little bit like the greatest show on turf, but that's not the most exciting thing. It's the defense, it's the young players, it's Branch and Kirby Joseph and Terrion Arnold, and I don't even want to say what they could become because I think a couple of those guys are dudes already.
Yeah.
But they're young players. I don't know how old Kirby Joseph is. He might be 25 at this point, right? Brian Branch might be 23.
Right.
Arnold's 21 or 22.
Yep. Rakestrell's in there too, 22,
yep.
3. Campbell, 24.
There's so much just goodness around this team and where it could end up.
Yeah.
And it's just to sum it up for me, it's just a really good time to be a Lions fan. Yeah. It really is.
Yeah.
And it's not going to end. Brad Holmes is in some ways a magician when it comes to some of these picks he's made. Now, are they all going to work? No, but that's you don't play a game where everything has to work,
right?
You need to find guys at certain points in the draft, and you can't miss early. And to this point, he's done a really good job of not missing early and then supplementing it with some stuff. Some of it's like being gifted. Like, how is Brian Branch around in round 2?
Never will understand it. I think we've had this conversation multiple times. There's no reason for it. He was one of the 20 best players in that draft.
Yeah, I mean, I think we both thought he was, but when he tested a little poorly,
mm-hmm.
and he was a little smaller. And I just think that there are times when NFL teams kind of overthink some of that stuff.
Yeah.
And I think he ran like 4.5.
I think it was.
Yeah, something in the 4.6 range, whatever it was. Well, like you couldn't see it. You can't really see on film like him. Does he look slow? No. His instincts are ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
So there's some of that where it's like, okay, he's not a 4.4 guy, but his instincts are so good. You kind of have to dismiss some of the long speed stuff. But whatever. Right. He was there when they took, I think they moved up a little to get him, but still, there's just so much excitement around what they have going on and what they're going to continue to do. Building this team next year, the idea of Hutch with Zadarius Smith is intriguing, and maybe a rookie edge rusher.
Yeah.
It's a good year to need an edge rusher if you want one.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, this week it's Indy, so let's get into that. What are your thoughts on this matchup?
Well, I look at Indy. I watched their offense last night, and I think there's some good going with Anthony Richardson, but he's still very sporadic with ball placement. If Jonathan Taylor wasn't such a good athlete, there was a screen pass early in that game in the maybe first or second quarter where if it would have not been Taylor and it would have been just, some schmuck out there, I think it would have been intercepted. I mean, the ball was way over his head. He made an athletic grab to kind of bat it down and catch it, and he was able to turn and gain a couple of yards. But I think the mobility that he has is obviously going to be something worth monitoring. I don't think that's a secret by any means. He's 6'4", 240, and every bit of it. I think the RPO stuff could be very problematic for Detroit, just depending on what they do. But the Lions have really shifted into, and I've been saying this for, we've been doing this show for about 18 months. I was really asking for a lot more cover 2 stuff, and they're starting to run it a lot more. They're not top in the league, but they're like top 10 in the league for cover 2 now. And shifting into that definitely helps because you obviously you have the 2 safeties back there in Kirby Joseph and Brian Branch. So it makes life a lot easier for the corners and the whole defense. And I think that's a big reason why they're being so successful. And then obviously just the consistency in stopping the run. You're making teams one-dimensional, and that's the big thing. But the RPO stuff that the Colts do, they run almost like this razor concept, which is something that Oregon likes to do with Will Stein, their offensive coordinator. He'll run, a zone read essentially, and they'll have an H-back, and that H-back will run the slide route, and he'll slide across the line of scrimmage and kind of out to the flats, and then you'll have a rail route, which is basically like a wheel up the sideline, and then a post route over the middle of the field, and that kind of takes the top of the defense off, and the quarterback can throw it deep, throw it short, or run it. And I think that can present some problems for Detroit. Now, the variation that the Colts do it is they'll take like Alec Pierce or Michael Pittman, and rather than running the post, it will look like a post, but it'll turn into a corner. So it's not really a post corner, but it's a deeper corner towards the middle of the field. And they get rid of that rail route completely. So it's that slide route from the H-back, and then the corner route, and then obviously Anthony Richardson doing his thing. So I think that could be problematic, but at the same time, the Lions have done such a good job with bend, don't break, and if they do what they're supposed to do, Anthony Richardson is good for 1, maybe 2 turnovers in this game, and if at all they can get some pressure with Zadarius Smith, they should be okay. And then just offensively, I like the matchup. There's nothing really about the Colts defense that worries me. They don't really get a pass rush. They don't send a ton of pressure. They don't blitz a bunch. So I think the Lions should be okay. And I know Goff tends to do a little bit better when teams blitz him, unless it's Houston and I got the backup left tackle in. But I think it's a good matchup all the way around, and I feel good about it. I really do. I probably took a little bit of a scenic route there to the answer, but I feel good about it.
I do too, and I think Josh Downs worries me. He's a really good player, right? And really good receiver, really, really good at finding areas in little zones where he can just kind of sit down and make plays. So there's a little concern there, and Richardson's capable of stretching the field with his arm, and he's capable of making plays with his legs. So you got to pay attention to all that stuff, and you got to play a good, honest game and make him beat you. On defense. The thing is, on offense, I could see the Lions kind of wanting to just kind of slow this thing down just a touch and just methodically, I don't want to say boring football, but if they're not going to blitz much, there's a group of plays that we're going to go to that work, and we're comfortable running them, and we're comfortable just moving the chains and scoring kind of thing.
Yeah.
I don't ever want Goff to be the guy who's just firing the ball deep way down the field. I don't think that's necessarily his strength as a player. But, the dig routes, the throwing into the middle of the field, we've seen them really dial it up with JMO on the crossers, the deep crossers that we've been for the last, I would say, since the first show we ever did. You don't have to throw it to him 50 yards down the field. Just get it to him where he can run away from people, and good luck to other people.
Yep.
So I kind of think that's, in some ways what to expect is maybe not a crazy high scoring game, but the Lions are playing good enough. They should be able to account for Richardson, and Jonathan Taylor's a really good running back. So, this is not one of those games where you look at it and you think like Jacksonville or Tennessee or, some of these games in the past where you think, yeah, this isn't really that big of a deal. But then again, I look at the number and it's like, Vegas has the Lions 7.5 point favorites on the road. So they're kind of expecting the Lions to handle their business in this matchup.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, kind of where we are too, is it just, if it goes the way we think it's going to go, yeah, they're going to give up plays. Anthony Richardson's going to make plays.
Yeah.
He's going to do some eye-popping things like, wow, but big picture, you hope that if the Lions play well and they execute well, they'll be fine.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing too is like, and I know they just won, they're coming off a win, but it's against the Jets. 2, they were down 24-16 in the fourth quarter of that game. And they needed basically a 2-minute drive from Anthony Richardson to close that thing out to win 28-27. So it's not like
he gave it to him.
And he gave it to him. I give kudos to where it is. But when you look at just the grand scheme of things and who they've played, outside of that, they had lost 3 in a row. They made that switch to Joe Flacco. It didn't work for them. But they haven't really beaten anybody. Like outside of the Steelers, 27-24, they beat the Titans. They beat the Dolphins. I don't think the Dolphins are very good.
Yeah.
They beat the Bears. We all kind of, I think, have our opinion on the Bears. And outside of that, they lost the Vikings. They lost the Bills. They lost the Texans. They lost to the Jags, 37-34. This is a team that has given up more points allowed than they have forced this year. They've allowed 250. They've only forced 236. So they're basically like Houston, but reverse. So I think the Lions would be fine. If you're in the betting market, I'm not going to touch the 7.5 just simply because the Colts are the best team against the spread this year. I believe they're 9-2 against the spread, so they're pretty good against the number in their home. So plus 7.5. I don't know. That's kind of a lot, but
it feels the same way to me. I think that's just that feels like so many points, but maybe that's a nod to what where the money is, right, and what they think of how good the Lions are.
Well, and I think that's the case. I look at the play calling, and that's another thing that I really wanted to touch on quickly as we kind of wrap up shop. But when I look at other games across the league, and this is why I feel so confident about the Lions, watching the Bengals play on Sunday night against the Chargers, and I watch every game. I'm not just watching the Lions and then go do yard work. I watch every game. It's like religion in this house. But Joe Burrow's at the 5-yard line, and the Bengals are at the 5-yard line, and it's 1st and goal. And you have Chase Brown, who is, I think, a phenomenal fit there at Cincinnati.
Yeah.
And you pass the ball 3 straight times out of shotgun. I do not understand the play calling in the NFL and in college and in high school. Run the effing football. And that's what Detroit does just about better than anybody outside of maybe the Baltimore Ravens. So I think the simplicity that the Lions have offensively and defensively, it's absolutely genius. Simplicity is genius, my friend, and it is working for the Lions so much, which is why they are the best team. And they might be able to come out and win, 28-17 on this game and win by 11 and cover the spread. It's possible, but it just feels like the Lions are not satisfied with just getting to 24, 28 points, taking the foot off the gas and coasting to the win. They are determined to get to 35, 40 and put it on you and make sure, hey, we won this effing game. And I think that's where this team is at. And it's been evident since that 49ers game last year. And I don't feel like the Colts have enough talent across the board to keep this game really as competitive as maybe we think. It could be competitive for a little bit, but I think once Detroit gets in their groove, it's over.
Yes. you say that, and I totally get it, and I recognize within myself as I'm hearing you talk about it, that my concerns with this matchup are driven by Anthony Richardson's mobility, and maybe I need to be a little less concerned about that.
No, you have a reason to.
Yeah, but like, does it scare you so much as a football person? Like, does his mobility scare you that much that you think these two teams, as presented, as well as the Lions are playing, and what the Colts look like, all of a sudden, all that goes away because you have a mobile quarterback? Like,
right.
Sometimes I have to check myself and like the biases of what I think I see. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
And right now I'm worried about Richardson running around and making plays. And yeah, he looked really good coming back from sitting for a couple of weeks, but he has to sustain that.
Yeah.
And it's going to be an exciting matchup, and it'd be a fun game to watch. It's just, the Lions should win this game.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying super comfortable, but they went into Green Bay and they handled themselves. You had a Brian Branch ejection, and it didn't seem to faze them. If anything, they stiffened.
Yeah.
Their resolve is it's amazing right now. Their ability to play through things, and then to look like they're having the greatest time of their lives.
They truly are.
And they were, yeah. So it just, again, it's a phenomenal time to be a Lions fan. It's well deserved for Lions fans. The suffering has gone on for so long.
Yep.
But the Lions are an elite football team in a lot of ways, and it couldn't be more fun to watch. It just couldn't be.
No, I agree.
It's awesome. It really is.
No, it is. It was a great bounce back win Sunday. It's great to see them. Well, they continue to win, but it was
I know what you mean.
Getting back to kind of normal. And I think that continues. And if they do kind of have a slip up coming up, I mean, you can kind of look ahead of the schedule, and you can tell us in the comments below here on YouTube or on Spotify, Spreaker, Apple Podcast, wherever you get your podcast. Give us a comment on where you think they slip up, or you can reach out to us on Twitter at Russ NFL Draft, at Bischoff_Scott, and let us know where you think this slip up is. Maybe it's Green Bay after Thanksgiving. Maybe it's Buffalo. Maybe it's at San Francisco. But just the way that they're playing, it's hard to not look ahead and just feel really good about what's going on. But we take it one game at a time, and we'll focus on the Colts, and like we did. And I feel good about it. You feel good about it. I don't have anything else to add.
No, we're good.
All right, good. Well, guys, like I said, you can rate, review, and subscribe to Detroit Lions Podcast on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all other podcast platforms. And of course, like I said, follow us on Twitter or X at Russ NFL Draft, at Bischoff_Scott. Got a short week next week. They play the Bears on Thanksgiving. If you're going to the game, enjoy that. If you're going to the Colts game, enjoy that. I hear that's a great time. I've never been to Indy. Have you ever been to Indy?
I've never been to a Colts game.
Oh,
but Combine, the stadium's it's super cool. Indy's a great city.
Yeah.
It might be 5 hours, 4.5 hours from here. So I would expect there to be a lot of Lions fans in the building.
Yeah, I think it almost will be a home game. So
yeah.
I was considering going when the schedule dropped and all that stuff with the holiday, and I was like, maybe I'll take figure some stuff out and move some stuff for the week of Thanksgiving, but ended up not going. But either way, going to be watching it. Can't wait. But yeah, that's it. That's the show. We will be back again probably sometime next week, but with the shortened week, we'll kind of figure that out. We'll talk about it and figure it out. But he's Scott Bischoff. I'm Russ Brown. This is Bischoff and Brown right here on the Detroit Lions Podcast.